Hey, so it's Ethan here, and in this video, I want to be walking you through how you can set up a LinkedIn Sales Navigator list to find qualified ideal clients on a consistent basis. Now, when I'm thinking of approaching to get consistent leads, the first thing I'm aiming to do is to make sure that I can reach out and I can find the right people. So, today's video, I want to show you how I do that for myself. Now, if you're familiar with Sales Navigator or not, you'll understand there are a lot of settings, a lot of things you can play around with. However, all I'm going to show you today is the stuff that I believe that is really necessary, so you can just not get confused by it. So let's go through it. The first thing is current company. Now, honestly speaking, this isn't going to be relevant unless you help people in a very certain company, right? And other than that, there's not really anything else. The first important thing is company headcount. Now, this is obviously going to depend in terms of sort of where you're at, the type of people you're targeting. So you can see here, obviously, at the moment for myself, I've got self-employed and 1 to 10. These are typically people I believe that I can help. There's obviously 11 to 50, and it even goes up from 501 to 1,000. So very much depends on the type of sort of offer that you have, whether you work with more sort of big corporate businesses or whether it's more like smaller businesses or individuals. Second thing, past company. That said, and like unless you target people from a specific company, it's not that interesting. Company type, you can actually sort of play around with this in terms of sort of public company and self-employed and such. I don't usually touch that so much. Um, or for example, if you're targeting non-profit, that might be quite useful. But a lot of the times, that's not so much of a priority. Company headquarters location. That said, this really isn't that important as well. If you are going to filter for location, ignore this. There's another filter that we can look for, so that's fine. Then with the role. So if your offer is quite broad, then you can go to roles. So, for example, if you help people in sales or help sales industry, you can obviously include that, right? Or broad things such as operations or such. Then you can always sort of use function as a way to capture a broad amount of people. That said, there is further down here in terms of industry where you can get more specific, which I like to focus on more so. The second thing, which was really important, is current job title. Now, I find this is actually really quite useful in being able to get very specific individuals who have a certain role. So for me, I'm targeting people that are founders, co founders. I might sometimes put owner in there or maybe coach or consultant. But at the moment, I've just got those two in there. Now, what you can do as well is you are also able to exclude. A lot of these filters, you're able to exclude certain roles or areas or like just within the filter. So sometimes that could be quite useful if you're aiming to avoid a certain type of individual. So that's really what I would say. Seniority level, this is something you can use as well, right? I mean, obviously, for example, here there's owner, partner, and such. The difference between current job title and seniority level, with the current job title, it's going to be more specific. You might get perhaps a smaller list, which is usually a good thing. I believe seniority level is more what LinkedIn classes that they would be in, as opposed to current job title, which is what the individual class themselves. And so seniority title usually, or at least the level, usually gives perhaps maybe more of a broader understanding. That said, past job title, years in current company, years in current position, unless you help certain individuals with this or in relation to some of these things, it's not going to be as relevant. Years in current company, years in current position. If you help a certain type of I don't know, individual that's been in that said current like business or something for a certain period of time, you can obviously go and play with that. That said, these usually aren't that important. Then it goes into personal. So geography is really important, right? Obviously, be able to make a very specific idea in terms of where your ideal clients are. So, for example, for me, mine is just simply the UK. Sometimes I do the US. What you can do as well, if you're not too picky, but perhaps you don't want third world countries, you can always type in whatever sort of area it is, and then you can obviously exclude it as well, right? So this might typically be sort of places like India or like whatever it might be, places where perhaps if you're quite open to whatever it might be, but you want to try and perhaps avoid more third world countries, then you can always do that as well. Then we have industry. Now, industry is obviously really quite important, and with industry, you basically just want to try and find the specifics of perhaps the type of people that you could work with. So for me, This, like is often sort of business, like people that tend to offer business consulting or just services around helping businesses, and even just things around training and coaching. Sometimes I might put sort of like fitness and sort of like wellness stuff as well. But for me, at least, I want to focus more around businesses and sort of more B2B side of things, just because that's where I believe I'm going to be able to help the most as well. Other than that, a lot of these things in terms of first, last name isn't so important. Profile language, usually I'll sort of just put this on English, just to avoid, sort of dealing with people or whatever language you're comfortable with, just to avoid a few problems. You can even put years of experience as well. That's something you can do. That said, you can obviously continue to play around with that. Other than that, here you can pretty much ignore buyer intent entirely. There's nothing relevant there. Best path in, ideally do second connections, right? If you don't have that much of a list, or perhaps you're not, that well developed from an account, you can always do third connections as well. You can do connections of, if you're like really trying to perhaps maybe get specific around a certain individual, but usually none of that necessarily matters. The only other thing here that I would say really matters is posted on LinkedIn and making sure that that's on. Just simply because it means you're more likely to get a response when you are connecting with people, when you are messaging people, or perhaps even them seeing your content. But a lot of the times, if you're thinking outreach wise, this is pretty much what you're going to be looking for. Now, I mean, if I sort of zoom out here, we'll see that at the moment, this list currently has about 6,000. That's a pretty good size. Usually, when I'm looking to create a Sales Navigator list, I'm looking for between maybe 2,000, maybe up to about 10,000. Don't really want to be too much more than 10,000. Maybe 2,000 to 6,000, usually quite all right, just because you don't want to have too small of a list to the point where you're going to run out and such. You also don't want to have too big of a list because then it can be quite broad and such as well. So you can always play around with these settings and figure out what you're best getting or not. You can also in search, also just search up sort of certain perhaps titles or keywords that might be there. What I've currently got is coach or consultant or trainer, then bracket and then brackets, not LinkedIn. This is something that I've been playing around with a little bit. I'm not doing too much with it, but overall, this is pretty much what I look to do with creating a LinkedIn Sales Navigator list. And once I've made this list, then I'll basically go through this list and I will basically find a profile and I will send a connection request, and that's it. I don't send a note with that connection request. I leave it empty just because it means that, from Monday to Friday or Monday to Saturday or such, I can send 20 to 30 connection requests every day without a note. And I know for sure that I am getting in front of my ideal clients, right? I know for sure, right? Whether they accept or not. And that's quite encouraging because then I know that, the people that do accept, I can then start that conversation and perhaps they're going to be more likely to sort of, benefit from what I do or be curious about what I do because it gives me warmer leads as they've sort of seen me as well. But overall, this is pretty much the setup that I will tend to use. And honestly speaking, this might take about 30 minutes for you to sort of like set up and play around with. And the list you make doesn't have to be your final list, right? I mean, even I'm like constantly sort of refining and changing around what I'm doing. But what you want is just something to start with and then just to start sending those connection requests and getting in front of them. Now, I'm not going to cover outreach in this video. I have covered outreach in other videos, but it is crucial that you're able to not just connect with these people and leave it at that and hope they reach out to you. You want to be the person that can initiate the conversation and start sort of chatting and seeing if or how perhaps you could help them, or just really seeing if they have a problem that you can solve to begin with. So hopefully you found this useful. And if you do want to find those outreach videos, then you should be able to find some more on my channel.